Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions, we discussed about some of the basic aspects related to salaries, the importance of employer-employee relationship, and some of the examples related to that. Also the definition of salary and some other terminology related to salary, like what is the difference between foregoing of salary and surrender of salary. Is there anything called tax-free salary? And we noted nothing like that. So the basis of charge which we discussed under section 15 tells us that salaries are taxable either on due basis or on receipt basis, whichever is earlier. And some of these basic aspects will be helpful for us in understanding this chapter in a better manner. And before we started discussing the provisions of this chapter, we also try to understand the pay scale system or graded pay scale system, where usually the increment is given on time basis. Normally that happens in government companies and government itself, because promotions, increments, etc. will happen on the basis of completion of service rather than performance in those areas. So normally government organizations will have graded pay scale mechanisms, wherein the employee will join at some monthly basic salary, which will be increased by a standard amount each year. Increment will happen every year, but that will be added to the monthly basic of the employee. Like that, once he reaches to a next level, increment will also once again increase, and he reaches to the next level, and then once more another increment might be there, and again they reach to the next level. Like this, graded pay scale can be fixed for particularly government employees or employees working in government organizations. So that is one of the important aspects. We discussed about it earlier. But in relation to the problems that were given to you, let us quickly go through the solutions. For example, first question, the question number 1 says that the SC has joined a company on 1/1/2016 with this pay scale. So 1st January 2016 till 31st December 2016. So here simply it is the calendar year which is forming in line with the service year of that employee. So we can do like this, where in the first year, that is 2016, he would be getting a basic of 12,000 rupees per month, later which will be increased to 12,500, then further it will be increased to 13,000, then 13,500, then 14,000, till it reaches 15,000. Now you don't need to do all this for practical purposes in the examinations. We can see how many years it will take for the 12,000 to become 15,000. What is the difference between 12,000 and 15,000? That is 3,000. Then 3,000 in 500 rupees each year means how many years it will take? 6 years it will take. So after the 2016 is finished, because the first year always will be original salary, there will not be any increment in that. So first year 12,000 is guaranteed. After that it will take 6 more years to reach to 15,000. So we don't need to worry about all the other things. Later what happens to that employee is not our purview. What we require is what will be the basic of this employee for the financial year 2019-20. What we know is for the calendar year 2019 it was 13,500. For the calendar year 2020 it would be 14,000. But we want for the financial year. So naturally we need to calculate how many months will be there in each of these categories, we need up from April 2019 to March 2020. So there will be 9 months in this category of 13,500, and in the category of 14,000 there will be 3 months, which means the total basic salary of this particular person for this assessment year 2020-21 would be 1,63,500 rupees. I hope most of you might have got the correct answer, that is 1,63,500 for the first question. Second question has a lot of years to be checked. Once again, you don't need to do all this, you don't need to write all this in the working notes. You need to directly go to the year and amounts that we need. So once again, here we can do like this, starting from 2005-6. dates are irrelevant because anyway joining happens on the first day of the month normally. So March 2005 to February 2006, how much salary he would have got? He would have got 20,000 rupees salary for that particular period. Then it will be increased by 1,500 rupees till it reaches 35,000. But the question is, how many years it will take to reach 35,000? That can be easily found out. For the year 2005-6, definitely the salary per month is going to be 20,000. But it will take how many years to reach to 35,000? Difference between 20,000 and 35,000 will be 15,000. 15,000 divided by 1,500 is 10 years. So it will definitely take 10 years to reach to 35,000. So all these intermittent calculations you can avoid. No need of all these calculations. They can be avoided. No need of them. So straight away you can go to 35,000 because 10 years after 2006 is going to be 2016. So 10 years completed after this. So from 16-17 onwards, he will have an increment of 2,000. So again, 2,000 will be added to that. Till how many years it will take? 5 more years it will take. So straight away you can do that till it reaches 5 more years, and exactly it is falling here. After 2016 is finished, 5 more years means exactly up to February 2021. That will be 45,000 when that employee reaches that level of salary. Once again, in the examinations, you might avoid all these calculations. Directly you can reach to 45,000, and you can understand for just a year before 45,000 it will be 43,000 naturally. So you can jump the calculations by taking the number of years it will take to go to the next level. So but anyway, we don't need all the earlier years. All that we need is only for this year, our financial year, how many months are going to be there with 43,000 salary, how many months are going to be there with 45,000 salary, how many months with 43,000 salary, April 2019 to February 2020, that is going to be definitely 11 months. And obviously only 1 month will be having 45,000 salary, that is March 2020. So the calculation will be 43,000 into 11 then naturally plus 45,000 into we don't need this, but just for understanding, 45,000 into 1, that will be 5,18,000. Final answer for question number 2. So how quickly you can do this by avoiding these steps is important, and how accurately you do this is more important. So correct answer for question number 2 is 5,18,000. Then moving on to question number 3, same One more person joined on 1/4/2010. 1/4/2010 means exactly financial year. So we don't need to worry much about that because we don't have to split the salary. We just need to know which salary is applicable for this person in the whole financial year, because already he joined in the beginning of the financial year only when he joined in 2010. So what would be his original salary starting with? It would be 6,000. And later on, how much will be his salary? Once it increases with 200 each till it reaches 8,000. So how many years it will take to reach 8,000? That we should find out. It will still take a lot of time. So from 6,000 to 8,000, 200 rupees increment means it will take 10 years. So from 2011, 10 years means 2021 it will be. So far how many years have passed by? Only 9 years have passed by. So what will be the 9th year's salary? Directly you can go without looking at all this. Straight away you can go to the April 2019 to March 2019 or March 2020, which is our requirement straight away. So what happens here? Starting 6,000, okay. Since there is one more year to complete 10 years from 2011 to 2021, by the end of March 2021 it will reach 8,000. So a year before that will be definitely 200 less than that. That is 7,800. So straight away 7,800 into 12 will be the final answer here. That is 93,600 rupees. Answer for third question. Then fourth question. X joined his service on 1/5/2014, May 2014. Pay scale is given like this, 5,000, etc. So how much will be that? 5,000 to 9,000, it will take 4 years to reach, but starting point definitely is going to be 5,000. After that, each year if the increment is 1,000, to reach 9,000 it will take exactly 4 years. So 2015 plus 4 means 2019 will have up till April 2019 the salary will be 9,000. Then the increment is 3,000. So the salary for 19 to 20 will be, May to April. So that will be 12,000. So here earlier January to December, then March to February, then March to February, April to March. Now we have May to April. Whatever the service year may be, which we don't need to worry about that. Our job is to identify how many months in our financial year, how much monthly salary that SC has got. So April 2019 ending, that year you would have got 9,000 per month. So how many months are there in this category? Only 1 month, that is April 2019. Only 1 month is there like that. Then what about this? May 2019 till March 2020 only there is 12,000 salary. That means 11 months is like this with 12,000 salary. So naturally what we need to do is 12,000 into 11 plus 9,000 into 1, which is nothing but 9,000. So total final answer would be 1,41,000. So that is question number 4. Answer 1,41,000. Then question number 5. Joined on 1st of February 2018 only in a scale of 25,000-2,500-35,000. That's it. So it's very much recently it is. So February 2018 to January 2019, he would have got a salary of 25,000. Then he would have got an increment of 2,500. So his salary would have become 27,500 per month. Then it would have become 30,000 per month. So be careful with the calculation once again. What we need is April 2019 to March 2020. So April 2019 to March 2020 means how many months in the category of 27,500? Till January only it was there. February, March will fall in next category. That means only 10 months are there like that. 2 months are falling in the other category. So once again, if we do the calculation, 27,500 into 10 plus 30,000 into 2, that will come to 3,35,000 as the total basic salary annually for Mr. Anand. These are the answers, final answers. Anybody got different answers? Check where you got wrong, recalculate them and understand the computation of graded pay scale very well. Very, very important aspect. I told the reason for it also. This may not give you huge marks, but this can take away many marks from us. So be careful in the calculations. 1,63,500, 5,18,000, 93,600, 1,41,000 and 3,35,000 are the final answers for the questions which were given earlier as an assignment. Now, let us continue the discussion on the core provisions of the salaries. So as we earlier discussed, this entire chapter can be broadly classified into 3 segments. One is allowances, one is perquisites, and one is retirement benefits. And with that, we can starting with allowances. So how the allowances are going to be taxable, let us understand that. Wages, salary, basic, all those things are normal. No need of any special explanation for that. So what is allowance? Allowance is what? Generally, allowance is something that is given to the employees to meet some particular requirements. Some name will be given to the allowance, but we need to understand whatever the name it is called. Ultimately, what is given is money only. Name is only just for convenience purposes. The employer will tell, use this money for house rent, use this money for some expenses, use this money on uniform or for conveyance, like that. But that does not mean that allowance is always spent on that purpose. That we have to check the facts if required, that too. We don't need to check the facts all the times. For example, if it is a dearness allowance, can we check that whether it is spent on the inflation? How is it possible? Not possible. So not possible to check and not required to check also. When it is not required, even if it is possible also, we should not check. The point is, when we should check the actual expenditure, when we should not check the actual expenditure, that depends upon the category of allowances. Of course, just like salaries, allowances will also be taxable on due basis or receipt basis, whichever is earlier. There is no difference there. It is going to be still the same. They are taxable either on due basis or on receipt basis, whichever is earlier. But what categories of allowances are there and where our calculations will have some importance or some relevance? Look at the 3 categories of allowances. First category is fully taxable. Second category is partly taxable. Third category is fully exempt. If you look at the first category, fully taxable, see, when the allowance is fully taxable, what is there to calculate? Nothing. Whatever is given in the question, if at all at the maximum, if it is given monthly, we will multiply with 12 and we say it is taxable. That's it. So there is no exemption, though no law or calculation that we need to apply for this category of allowances. So all these allowances are fully taxable always. And you need to remember this list. This list has to be remembered. There are some names given and some numbers, around 13 allowances are given. You should remember these names. No option. What are those? Entertainment allowance, DA, dearness allowance is always taxable, always fully taxable. No discussion on that, always taxable, no exemption, no nothing. We will give unnecessary details. Entertainment allowance is also fully taxable. We may say that maybe there is a deduction available. That is latter. If at all it is available or not, that comes under section 16, which is a separate section, separate topic. But basically entertainment allowance, if it is given, whether it is spent or not, whether it is spent for actual purposes or not, we don't care. That is the point. Unnecessarily what he will do in the examination questions, he will tell entertainment allowance 5,000 rupees per month is given. In that, the SSC has spent 1,000 rupees for entertainment of the customers, like that you will tell. That doesn't matter. They are fully taxable. In all cases, they are fully taxable. That's it. So actual expenditure do not matter when it comes to these fully taxable allowances. We have to keep in mind, definitely questions will try to misguide us. We have to be thorough and firm on that. That is the main point in taxation. We cannot have double mind here. We have to be always firm on what provision we know, and we have to stick to that. That can be only done when the provisions are thoroughly understood and thoroughly remembered. There is nothing to understand here. What is entertainment allowance? Why is it given? Why should we care about it? Its name itself indicates half of that. It is entertainment allowance. That's it. That is money given. Entertainment allowance is name. So dearness allowance is name. But in these names, if all the allowances are given, any of such allowances are fully taxable. Like that overtime allowance, if they say taxable. Medical allowance, very important. Medical facility is different. Medical allowance is different. Medical facility means employer giving medical facility to employee, medical treatment to employee. That is different. That becomes a perquisite. Medical allowance is different. Medical allowance means money that is given by employer to employee. Of course, he will tell that use this for medical purposes. We don't care whether the employee really uses it for medical purposes or not. Maybe really employee uses all of that medical allowance for medical purposes. Still does not matter. Don't try to apply logic here. Sir, he received 1000 rupees, he spent 500 now, 500 only should be taxable now. No. Entire 1000 rupees will be taxable because it is under the fully taxable category. No other questions. Fully taxable means fully taxable. That's it. Same way, city compensatory allowance. Generally, it is given to meet the increased cost of living in cities. Usually, if you remember, if you generally observe the cities like Mumbai or Delhi, for that matter, Bangalore nowadays, they are too expensive. And in general, most of the pay scales of the employees at a particular category will be same. Imagine there is a bank employee working in a bank in Mumbai and another bank employee working in, say, a small town like Warangal. The expenses for them will not be same, but their pay scale will be same, which is unfair. So in order to compensate for the increased cost of living in the cities, the one in Mumbai might get. Are we telling that we should give them? No. Might get. If he gets, our job is only to understand what is the treatment. Once again, please understand the limitation of salaries from our point of view. We are not the ones to give any of these allowances to anybody. Not even the government, not even the department. This is employer who is giving these allowances to employee, and there is no rule that they have to give this allowance to employee. If they give, then what is the tax treatment is our only concern. If they don't give, why did not give, we don't care. That is not our business. So please understand that limitation. Sometimes it so happens that we will enter into the shoes of employers or employees and get lost there. So don't do that. Just understand and observe. These are all allowances, which is nothing but actually money. That money is given with different names by employer to the employee to meet some particular expenditure. The name of that allowance only indicates that the purpose of that allowance is for a particular expenditure. That does not have any impact on the taxability if the names of allowances are like this: entertainment allowance, dearness allowance, overtime allowance, medical allowance, city compensatory allowance. Like that, some other allowances can be given, interim allowance, just like that. Any name they can give. Servant allowance they can give. Allowance is different once again. Servant provided is different. Servant provided is different. Servant allowance is given different. If the employer gives a servant to the employee, that becomes a perquisite. If the employer gives allowance to the employee in the name of servant allowance, that becomes allowance and that is fully taxable. So perquisites will come about it. We talk about it later. As far as servant allowance is concerned, definitely that is fully taxable. Then we have project allowance, something like named project allowance. Whatever it might be, that will be fully taxable. Same way, tiffin allowance, lunch allowance, dinner allowance, like that if the employer gives, they are all fully taxable. Once again, tiffin provided, lunch provided, dinner provided by employer. Are we talking about that now? Answer is no. We are not talking about perquisite. We are not talking about tiffin or lunch or dinner provided. We are talking about money given. by employer to employee in the name of tiffin allowance or lunch allowance or dinner allowance. So irrespective of the actual expenditure spent by the employee, all these allowances will be fully taxable. Of course, there can be any other allowances like warden allowance, proctor allowance, non-practicing allowance given to professionals, and transport allowance. This is also important to employees other than handicapped employees, because there is an exemption for handicapped employees. Only for normal employees, transport allowance is fully taxable. This word is a very, you can say, sometimes complicated word. What is transport allowance here? In what context it is transport allowance? The word transport is used many times in many contexts in the Income Tax Act. We need to very clearly understand which context this is used here. This transport allowance, what we are talking about here, is the allowance which is given to meet the expenditure of travel between house and office. That's all. That means the employee naturally has to go daily from office to house and house to office. He has to commute between these two places. To meet that expenditure, whatever allowance is given, that is the transport allowance what we are talking about here. And that is a transport allowance which has some exemption if the employee is a handicapped employee, and normal employees will have full taxability of such transport allowance. These are the various allowances, and generally any other cash allowance is taxable. So the point is, if there is a variety allowance which we don't know, which is not mentioned in the Income Tax Act at all, suddenly if it is given like that, let us say a beauty parlor allowance, like that, like let us say spectacles allowance, goggles allowance, like that, if it is given, we don't need to even think about it. Automatically it becomes taxable. Any cash allowance automatically becomes taxable, except it is particularly exempt under section 1013A or 1014. Where it is exempted, then only it is exempted. Otherwise, all others are fully taxable. Of course, if they are exempted separately, that list is different. Those are all variety candidates. We'll come to that. But basically, for normal people, normal employees, all these allowances are fully taxable. See, when they are fully taxable, what is the great job that we have to do? Nothing. No calculation, no exemption, nothing. All that you need to do is remember these names. That is what we should do. We don't remember these names, naturally our treatment will go wrong. So be careful. Remember this list of fully taxable allowances. Once again, entertainment allowance, dearness allowance, overtime allowance, medical allowance, city compensatory allowance, interim allowance, servant allowance, proctor allowance, lunch, dinner or tiffin allowance, warden allowance, non-practicing allowance, transport allowance, or any other cash allowance, all of them are taxable fully in the hands of employees, irrespective of the actual expenditure incurred by the employees. To confuse, he will definitely give actual expenditure. We should just ignore that. Be very careful with this list of fully taxable allowances. No calculation, but memory of the list of these taxable allowances should be there. Suddenly project allowance comes in the question, we should know that it is fully taxable. What is it we don't need to know? Why even we don't need to know? What we should definitely know is it is fully taxable. That is our importance. Taxability is the importance to us, not why is it given, what is it given, employee, did he spend it or not. All those things are irrelevant. Now see, when they are irrelevant, what is the point of knowing them? No use. That's why these allowances, if these names are appearing in the problem, you just simply understand fully taxable. And in this, dearness allowance is a very important concept, because to confuse, certain more details will be given. Actually, we use the dearness allowance also in different circumstances for calculation of exemptions. So dearness allowance will be of two categories, broadly speaking. Broadly, when we say dearness allowance, we can say one category is the forming part of salary and one category is not forming part of salary. So this can be expressed also in different ways, but generally this is what we call forming part of salary, not forming part of salary. That is about dearness allowance we are talking, not others, only dearness allowance. But the point to note here is, it doesn't matter whether it is forming part of salary, not forming part of salary, as far as taxability is concerned, because anyway the dearness allowance is fully taxable. For that it doesn't matter. Then why it matters? It matters in the computation of exemptions. For that purpose of calculation, it might matter whether DA is forming part of salary or not forming part of salary. You should never involve this classification here. Here it is not important to note whether DA is forming part of salary or not forming part of salary. Always it is fully taxable. So that is an important aspect to remember while solving the questions. Of course, when time comes, we should definitely classify dearness allowance into two categories, and treatment of that for computation of exemptions will be different. But that is only for computation of exemptions, but not for making it taxable or not taxable. There is no question about it. Whether DA is taxable or not taxable, there is no question. They are all fully taxable. Entertainment allowance, overtime allowance, all these allowances are fully taxable. Remember this list very well. Now let us go to the other extreme, that is fully exempt. On one side there is fully taxable allowances, no calculation, only list to be remembered. On other side extreme there is fully exempt allowances, but this also you don't need to really by heart it, not required, because you can easily understand. These people are all not normal people. Allowances to High Court judges, we are talking about them. Allowances to United Nations Organization employees, big people, these are all. Compensatory allowances received by judges. Same way, some allowances, sumptuary allowances granted to High Court or Supreme Court judges. So these are all for judges and all, United Nations and all. And also allowances granted to government employees outside India. The last one you already know. What is that? That is section 10(7). That we know. That is what? Allowances granted to government employees outside India. If that person is an Indian citizen, those are exempt under section 10 subsection 7. That is known. Other four are new things here, and all of them are, you can easily just broadly remember, no need to separately by heart, because anyway they are exempt, right? There is nothing to calculate. What is there to calculate? They are fully exempt. If any allowance is given to court, High Court, Supreme Court judges or United Nations Organization employees, then it is fully exempt automatically. So there is no need to compute, there is no need to separately remember them also. But on a broader basis, you can remember these characters: High Court judges, United Nations Organizations, UN officials, and other allowances received by judges, High Court or Supreme Court judges. So judges, and UN officials. These are all whatever allowances they receive, fully exempt. 10(7) we already know, that is related to the allowances which are given to an Indian citizen. Once again, there the important thing is Indian citizen working abroad for government of India and earning money there and receiving money there also. Still it becomes taxable if it is normal salary, but if it is allowance, it is fully exempt. Exemption about section 10(7). Same thing applies to perquisites also, by the way. So here we are talking about allowances, so we focused on allowance. That's it. That is about fully taxable allowances, no calculation required, straight away taxable. Fully exempt allowances, no calculation required, straight away exempt. So nothing special about these two. They are easy to remember. But fully taxable allowances, names you have to remember, that work you have. Fully exempt allowances, that also there is not required to be having a special effort on that. They can be broadly remembered, that is enough. Details are not required for them. But for fully taxable allowances, you need to remember the names very well. Okay. Then our actual calculations, what is our purpose here is only majorly is related to what? That is related to partly taxable allowances. Partly taxable allowances means partly exempt also naturally. So point is, we need to calculate the exemptions under section 1013A or under section 1014. According to that, we need to give some exemption to the allowances. Remaining amount becomes taxable. So imagine if the amount that a person receives falls under the fully taxable category, if at all, there is nothing to calculate, the entire amount will become taxable. If a person receives 10,000 rupees dearness allowance, entire 10,000 is taxable. No calculation required. If the same amount is a fully exempt allowance, then entire 10,000 is exempt. No calculation required. What if it is an allowance which is related to partly taxable category? Then what happens? Amount received is 10,000. We need to find out the amount exempted under either section 1013A or 1014. any of them depending upon the type of allowance. 1013A is only one allowance, that is HRA. Whatever the exemption according to these sections it is, reduce it from the 10,000 and remaining amount only becomes taxable. That is why we call it partly taxable. Naturally, which also means it is partly exempt. And what is our job is to calculate that how much of that is exempt. Once you know how much of that is exempt, how much of that is taxable will automatically come, which is nothing but amount received, whatever the amount received, minus whatever the amount that is exempted from this amount received as per section 1013A or 1014. So naturally, the remaining amount becomes taxable. So that is the calculation we need to do. For that, main calculation is exemption calculation. Automatically, received amount will be given in the question. Exemption related details will be given in the question. Exemption provisions will be not given in the question. That we should know under 1013A and 1014. That we should apply them and calculate the appropriate exemption, how much is permitted by law. Reduce it from the amount received, which is a fact, which is a reality given in the question. Then you get what is taxable amount of that allowance. That category is the most important category for us. When we say allowances category in this chapter, we are talking about basically partly taxable allowances. That is where some calculations are involved. Fully exempt allowances, no calculations. Fully taxable allowances, also no calculations, but names are to be remembered for that category. That is about fully taxable, partly taxable, and fully exempt allowances. The details are not required. You can just generally go through them if you are interested. And we don't care actually why is it given and all. Ultimately, what matters is they are taxable anyway. Why should we care about why is it given and all that? Sometimes it is quite possible, if at all, there is a purpose for which it is given. Whatever that purpose may be, ultimately whether that amount is spent or not, they are anyway fully taxable. So these are only for general knowledge purposes. Why in general city compensatory allowance is given? Already we discussed that. Why entertainment allowance is given? Generally to entertain guests and customers. Why transport allowance is given? This is important. This is for the purpose of commuting between the place of office and residence. Understand this difference? This is the point here. Place of his residence and the place of his duty. That only is the transport allowance what we are talking about, not any other transport allowance. The transport is a very generic word for anybody to move from one place to another place, or for moving goods from one place to another place. This word transport can be used, but that is not what is important to us. Substance is important to us. Which transport allowance we are talking here? We are talking about that transport allowance which is given for the purpose of commuting between the place of residence and the place of duty. That is the transport allowance we are talking. Of course, for normal persons it is fully taxable. However, in case of handicapped employees, there is an exemption of up to 3,200 rupees per month, which is there in section 1014 already, which will be anyway discussed later. But now that that point has come, you can remember this. Anyway, it has to be remembered. So what is the exemption for handicapped employees? Not for everybody, handicapped employees only. Exemption for transport allowance is 3,200 rupees per month. Does it mean we are asking the companies to pay 3,200 rupees to their handicapped employees? No, that is none of our business. Government or us, we cannot tell that. That is what employer and employee will settle in between them. If the employer gives any amount of transport allowance, up to 3,200 rupees per month can be given as exemption. So what if employer gives 2,000 rupees only as transport allowance to a handicapped employee? Naturally, 2,000 only can be exempted. How can the exemption be more than income? Not possible. So that is why up to 3,200 per month is exempted. Maximum amount of exemption is 3,200 per month. That too not for everybody, only for handicapped employees. Details again we don't need. Blind, deaf, dumb, or the vertically handicapped. All those things are not required. Normally, handicapped employees is what you can remember. But one more care has to be taken. Sometimes little over smart students, what they will do? They will assume that the employee is handicapped, though it is not given in the question. That is absolutely ridiculous. Please don't do that. If nothing is given, every SSC is a normal, healthy person. Don't make them handicapped. Don't give exemption to them unnecessarily because you want to give exemption. You don't make them handicapped. Handicapped is only when it is given in the question. If it is not given in the question, normal person, not a handicapped person. If it is not given in the question, less than 60 years, not more than 60 years. So these type of wild assumptions we should not take. A person is 80 years old, the handicapped is going to die tomorrow. These type of bad assumptions we should not take. Normal person means normal person. Nothing is given means normal person only. So don't take exceptional circumstances as assumptions. That would be wrong. So if nothing is given, no exemption. Simply speaking, entire transport allowance is fully taxable. If it is given in the question that the employee is handicapped and is given a transport allowance, then only these two combinations should be there. Employee should be handicapped and he should be given transport allowance. Then there is a possibility of exemption of up to 3,200 rupees per month. This per month also is important to be noted and remembered. This everywhere, numbers that are going to be appearing, we need to remember them exactly. Little bit broad remembering is not enough. Broad remembering where it is okay, High Court judges, Supreme Court judges, okay, United Nations employees, fine. There you don't need any specifics there. But here, specifically number, if it is given in the question, in the provision, that number you have to remember exactly the way it is given, which is in this case per month. 3,200 rupees per month is the maximum exemption available for handicapped employees in respect of the transport allowance which is given to them for the purpose of commuting between the place of residence and the place of duty. However, for the normal person, that same allowance will be fully taxable. That's it. That is transport allowance, and some of the allowances are given details here, others are not required. Those are self-explanatory. Lunch allowance, why is it given? What is he eating in lunch? Is he eating biryani or is he eating something else? We don't care. I mean, we cannot go into that. What tiffin is eating? Why dinner allowance will be given by employers? Normally, dinner will be done at home now. All these nonsensical thoughts can come. It's all for fun. It's okay, but not seriously to be taken. So income tax provisions are about applying the income tax provisions, not about the real life scenarios. Real life scenarios could be completely different from this. We don't really need to worry about them. We need to remember the provisions well, because in the problems, any of these allowances might appear, the one which are fully taxable. So definitely need to remember those names. So only some of them have been explained a little bit here. That's okay. So that is already known to us. Then coming to the exemptions or the allowances which are partly taxable. Allowances which are partly taxable means what? Definitely they are partly exempt. They are partly taxable means they are partly exempt also. So if they are partly taxable and partly exempt, how much they are exempt and how much they are taxable, that has to be remembered. In this, there are two categories of things, exemptions provisions which are applicable. One is section 1013A, which is related to HRA, that is house rent allowance, and the another one is related to section 1014, that will also have certain number of exemptions under section 10 subsection 14. But before moving to the list of exemptions under section 1014, first let us calculate and try to understand the application of section 1013A, that is house rent allowance. Very important provision. We are now entering into the real taxation, we can say. So far it was all like starting type. Real provisions of taxation will be like this. Now we are entering into that. Starting with house rent allowance, we can say the computations will be according to this provision of exemption related to section 1013A. Once again, why HRA is given? Name itself tells why HRA is given: to meet the house rent of the employee. Employer gives some allowance to employee, but that is different. Why is it given? That is between employer and employee. The moment the question says HRA, it is HRA. We know that it is given already. It is a fact. If it is not given, we don't have to worry about it. You cannot search for HRA provision or HRA amount in the question. Not possible. If it is there, it is there. If it is not there, not there. But what is our job? Our job is, if there is a HRA given by the employer to the employee, then there is an exemption which is applicable to the employee, because who is receiving it is employee. What he is receiving is not house, by the way. He is receiving an allowance. Allowance means money. Employee is receiving money from the employer by name of house rent allowance. Then since it is an income, naturally it will be taxable basically. However, according to section 1013, there is an exemption. What is that exemption? This is what you should remember. What is the exemption? That depends upon the city in which the house is situated. It depends upon the city in which the house is situated, not the city where the employee is working. That is one point to be noted. And how much exemption can be given? That is depending upon whether the employee is staying in Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai. That's all. Only 4 cities. Okay, you want to call them metro cities, it's okay. That's fine. That's only a name we give. Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, and Chennai. That's all. Only 4 cities have one category of calculation. Other cities have other category of calculation. In that also, there is only one change. Actually, the first point and second point both are same. There is no difference as far as 4 metros are concerned or other cities are concerned. Only difference comes where that comes in the third point, that is this one. So we'll come to that later. First common points let us complete. Both are same. And by the way, employee will stay in only one place, either in the category of metro cities or the other cities. Same person cannot be staying in 2 different places. And wherever he is staying, we don't care. The HRA is given for which house? For that house we are talking about. For that house, where that house is situated. If it is situated in metro also, if it is situated in other places also, the first 2 calculations are same. And what are those? First one is actual HRA received for the relevant period. Naturally, that period will be during our previous year. Whatever HRA received is the first one. That will be given in the question. Directly you will take that. Second one is rent paid minus 10% of salary for the relevant period. So this is a calculation to be done. Rent paid is a fact. 10% of what? Salary. This is the important word here. So this word salary is not the salary that was defined in section 17.1. This salary is different. Like this, for every provision in this chapter, the salary definition will change. Welcome to income tax. That's what happens, whether we like it or not. Salary definition is given generally in section 17.1, we know that. But that is a broader calculation of salary. Here, what is this salary? This salary is only required for the purpose of computation of exemption for house rent allowance. After that, this calculation is useless. Once you calculated exemption for house rent allowance, this salary word is useless. That doesn't have any kind of relevance. So, like this, for every exemption or every calculation, there might be a requirement to calculate salary, the definition of which might change from provision to provision. Like that, many different definitions of salary will come, but those definitions are not generic definitions. Those are contextual definitions which should be used only in the context of calculation what we are doing. Here what we are doing, we are computing the exemption of HRA. For that purpose, we require something called what is salary, because if you know what is salary, then only you can calculate what is 10% of salary. Rent paid is a fact. Rent paid you and I cannot calculate. Rent paid is the reality that the employee actually pays to his landlord. So if that rent paid is given in the question, it should be given, then only we can calculate HRA exemption. And HRA actually received also is a fact. That is also a fact. So actual HRA received, nothing for us to greatly calculate. Rent paid, nothing for us to greatly calculate. There is nothing big deal there. So what is main thing here? 10% of salary. So salary is the main point here to be definitely noted. So here we will have rent paid minus 10% of salary. That's what it is. That is the second point. Rent paid minus 10% of salary. Minus 10% of salary. So the first one is different. That is actual HRA received. Second one is rent paid minus 10% of salary. So what do we require here? We require rent paid also as a detail in the question, salary also as a detail in the question. 10% of that we should calculate. That is the second calculation. Third calculation is where the cities will come into picture. If it is the 4 metros, then third calculation is 50% of salary. That is the third calculation. If it is 4 metros, if it is not, then it is going to be 40% of salary. Of course, whichever is exempt, out of all this, which is exempt? Whichever is least of the following. Least is the exemption. So the exemption is what? Whichever is lower, we can say. Whichever is lower of what? Actual HRA received, first one. Second one, rent paid minus 10% of salary. Third one, 50% or 40% of salary according to the city where the employee stays. So we can do like this. Actual HRA is the first calculation, and rent paid minus 10% of salary is the second calculation. Third calculation is 40% or not both, or 50% of salary is the third calculation. Whichever is lower will be the exemption granted under section 1013A for the house rent allowance that is received by employee. That is a provision required here. So you don't need full two boxes and all. Simply you can just follow this. Actual HRA received, first calculation. There is no calculation, it will be given in the question. Rent paid is also fact given in the question. Salary, there might be a calculation. 10% of salary, definitely we have to calculate. And once you know what is salary and how much is salary, the third calculation is about 40% or 50% of salary. Once you have all the three, whichever is the lowest of the three will become exempt. That should be reduced from the actual HRA received. Then you will get what is the taxable HRA. So once you want to know the taxable amount of HRA, this much steps are involved. First, actual HRA received minus we need to do the exemption. Once again, by taking all these three calculations, whichever is the lowest should be given as exemption. Remaining amount becomes taxable. That's it. That is about HRA provision 1013A. Of course, certain important points to be noted here. Exemption is not available for an SSE who lives in his own house. No exemption. Or in a house for which he has not incurred any expenditure. Means, in other words, rent paid is zero. Just imagine rent paid is zero. First will be there, actual HRA, let us say he received 40-50% of salary also, you can calculate, no problem. But what about second calculation? Rent paid minus 10% of salary. Rent paid is zero. 0 minus 10% of salary will be a negative amount. Can there be a negative exemption? Is it possible? No. If negative exemption means there is double taxability. So that is not possible, which means that is ridiculous to have a negative exemption, which means if the rent paid is zero, don't need to calculate anything here. Ultimately, no HRA exemption at all. Fully whatever HRA received becomes taxable. That's it. That is the first point. No rent paid, no HRA exemption is the first point. Second point, this is what we are looking for. What is salary? Here we have 10% of salary, we have 50% of salary or 40% of salary. What does it mean? What does it mean? This is important. Basic salary, dearness allowance if it is provided in the terms of employment, that is called DA, forming part of salary, and commission as a fixed percentage of turnover achieved by the employee. So turnover means not the entire employer's turnover. Imagine if the employee is a kind of salesman type, marketing or sales persons will have some commission as a percentage of the sales or turnover that they achieved. That will be also included for the purpose of salary here. Basic, of course, is there. DA will not be there fully. That is where the difference once again comes here. Dearness allowance fully will not come here. Dearness allowance, which portion will come here? It will come only if it is provided in the terms of employment. That word may be used, or simply it can be called as DA, forming part of salary. That is included for the purpose of salary here. Once again, don't mix up the definition of salary earlier. Don't mix up the dearness allowance, which was fully taxable earlier, with this. That was different. This is different. What is the DA we are talking about here? Does it have any direct impact on the final income of the SSE? No. It has impact only for the purpose of this calculation. For the purpose of computation of exemption of HRA, we needed the salary definition. And for that purpose of salary, only we will include dearness allowance if it is forming part of salary only. If it is provided in the terms of employment, then only we will include the dearness allowance in the salary. For this purpose, once again very important, for this purpose, not for any other purpose. If it is given like this for other purposes also, then we use it. If not, something else is defined as salary, we use that. So computation of exemption of HRA depends upon the computation of salary for the purpose of computation of exemption of HRA, which is nothing but basic plus DA forming part of salary plus commission as a percentage of turnover achieved by the employee. So DA, we call that forming part of salary, and commission on turnover, not on the profit, not anything else. Commission on turnover. These three things will be included as points while calculating the salary for the purpose of computation of HRA exemption. Once this is calculated, then you can find out the 10% of salary or 40% of salary or 50% of salary. Then you can insert it in the computation of exemption of HRA. Then you get exemption of HRA, that will be reduced from the actual HRA received. The remaining amount will become taxable. This much of process is there, and all this is for 1 mark only. It is not going to be for a separate big question. If at all MCQ is asked, maybe 2 marks question is there. In a bigger question, this will be after all just like a small working note. That's it. But each and every calculation is important. Accuracy is definitely important, because of if any of these things is calculated wrong, if salary is calculated wrong here, naturally the entire calculation of exemption also goes wrong. So be careful. Provisions to be very thoroughly understood and remembered. Application also has to be very thorough. Now anyway, the third note is there, which says us about what is relevant period. So relevant period is a period for which the said accommodation was occupied by the SSC. Occupied. Naturally during the previous year. If it is occupied by the SSC for, let us say, only 5 months, then this all calculation will be also restricted to 5 months only. Exemption will be given for only that 5 months. If it is occupied, then only exemption. Not occupied, no exemption. If it is owned by him, no exemption. Exemption is there only when, if the SSC really stays in a rented accommodation, genuinely the SSC is a tenant. He is staying in a rented accommodation, paying rent, but he is also receiving some HRA from his employer. Then we talk about exemption of HRA for that particular SSC according to section 1013A. That's it. That is exemption of HRA under 1013A. Now let us do one of the illustrations here. Look at the illustration number 1. Read the details. Mr. Rajkumar has the following receipts from his employer. Basic pay is 3000 rupees per month. That is basic pay. DA is 600 rupees per month. It is not given whether it is forming part of salary or not. At the end it is given. DA forms part of salary for retirement benefits, means DA is forming part of salary. Commission is given 6000 per annum. What kind of commission? It is not given. Motor car for personal use, expenditure by employer. So here that is 500 rupees per month, whatever it is. HRA is given as 900 rupees per month. Some unnecessary details will be given. Don't need to worry about them. What is required here? Find out the amount of HRA eligible for exemption only to Mr. Rajkumar, assuming that he has paid a rent of 1000 rupees per month for this accommodation at Kanpur. Kanpur is also important. Kanpur we don't care, but we definitely know that it is not Delhi, not Calcutta, not Chennai, not Mumbai. As long as it is not any of the four, definitely the calculation will be 40% of salary. So that is the details which are given in that particular question. So what are the details which are given? Those have to be first of all kept in a proper format. Of course, the heading will be normally computation of exemption of HRA, that will be there. First thing first, actual HRA received. How much is the actual HRA received? That you should write. How much is received here? 900 rupees per month, that is received. That means 10,800 rupees is received. From that, you should deduct the exemption. In the exam, you should write all these full things, less exemption under section 10(13)(a). That is exemption. That has to be calculated in a separate working notes, preferably. Working notes separately to be written for that exemption calculation. And what is that working note? Once again, for exemption calculation, we have three things. What are those three things? First thing, actual HRA received. Actual HRA received how much? Once again, same amount, that is 10,800, same, that is 900 rupees per month. Then second thing is what? Rent paid minus 10% of salary. So we need two details here. I'm just showing it separately. Rent paid is 1, 10% of salary is 1. Rent paid minus 10% of salary we need here. How much is rent paid? Fact once again. One by one we have to look at the facts. How much is the rent paid? He paid rent of 1,000 rupees per month, he said, in Kanpur. So rent paid is 1,000 rupees into 12 months, that is 12,000 rupees. Then a question comes, 10% is okay, but what is salary? For that separate working notes is required. One more. So what is the separate working notes here? Working notes 2. Salary means what here? What is salary? Salary means basic plus DA forming part of salary plus commission as a percentage of turnover achieved by the employee. But commission here it is given as a fixed amount, not as a percentage. But we can safely assume that if that is also part of the salary, if at all we think that already that amount is given as it is a percentage only calculated. So that depends upon how we assume. So if we assume that commission is already computed as a percentage of turnover, and after that we have 6,000, then it is a different story. But if you think that this commission 6,000 is a standard amount per annum, which the question also says like that. So these are the receipts from his employer. So commission 6,000 per annum directly. If it is considered to be a computed commission on percentage of turnover, it can be included in the salary. If not, it can be excluded from the definition of salary. It depends upon our assumption. So let us assume it is includable, assuming that this commission is already computed according to a percentage of turnover achieved by the employee. In that case, what will be salary? Once again, basic 3,000 per month. So basic is 3,000 per month. Okay. Then DA is 600 per month. 600 per month. Okay. So per month means annually 7,200. 3,000 per month means annually 36,000. Commission is 6,000 per annum. Once again, we may take it, we may not take it. Depending upon our assumption, we can do that. So let us take this. So what is salary here? For our purpose, we got it as 49,200. It might not be the same thing always. Maybe it is taken in a different way here. So what is the purpose of salary? If at all this amount is there, only 3,600 is taken there. This commission is not taken there because it is assumed to be only a fixed amount according to the script of the question, 6,000 per annum. But if you want to include that also, you can write a note. It has been assumed that 6,000 is computed as a percentage of turnover achieved by the employee. So we have taken 6,000 also. Taking it also, the salary is 49,200. Now we have 10% of salary easily. What is 10% of salary? 10% of 49,200, that is 4,920. Then rent paid minus 10% of salary will be how much? 7,080. That is the second calculation, that is 7,080. Each of them requires separate calculation and close observation. First of all, HRA received is reality 10,800. Exemption we are calculating, we don't know yet. Then in the working notes exemption calculation, point number 1 is once again actual HRA received, that is 10,800. Point 2 is rent paid minus 10% of salary. Rent paid is 12,000. 10% of salary is 4,920. So 7,080 is the calculation here. Rent paid minus 10% of salary. And what is salary? We have included basic plus DA forming part of salary plus Commission also we included, assuming it is a computed commission after taking it as a percentage of turnover really achieved by the employee. So that is rent paid minus 10% of salary. The third one is either 40% or 50% of salary. We know salary how much, but 40 or 50 depends upon the city. City was given as Kanpur. So when Kanpur is a city, it is 40% of salary. So 40% of salary, once again the definition what we have is this. Other things are all irrelevant. Whichever is lower in this, out of these three, whichever is lower, that only will be exemption. So lower is 7080. Take it here, 7080 as exemption. So naturally, what is the taxable HRA in this case? 3,720. That's it. This is the taxable HRA in the hands of employee. Of course, the question asked, if at all, about only exemption. If in MCQ, don't calculate taxable and all. What is asked in the question, that only you calculate. This is shown for illustrative purposes. Question was asking exemption. Exemption answer is 7080. That's it. Taxable amount is 3,720. There is a difference here because we assumed 6,000 turnover to be also included. They have not taken it as part of salary for this purpose. That is why there is a difference in answer. Don't worry about it. That is about the assumption that we took. If that assumption is not taken, this 6,000 can be excluded. All answers will be different. Naturally. In that case, this will be also 7,680. So wherever there is a change here, if we include it, answer is 7080. If we exclude it, answer is 7,680. Then answer will be taxable HRA of 3,120. So that is the difference, 7,680 in one case, 7,080 in another case. That's all. So that is the answer here. Finally, for this question related to Mr. Rajkumar for his HRA that is received. So understand and read the provision carefully. What is the provision? For exemption, actual HRA or rent paid minus 10% of salary or 40% or 50% of salary, whichever is lower is exemption. For the purpose of salary, here it is basic plus DA forming part of salary plus commission as a percentage of turnover achieved by the employee shall be considered as salary. That's it. That concludes 1013A. In the next session, we will discuss about some more provisions of allowances, that is exemption under section 1014. Till that time, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.